everyone. Welcome to the third edition of the Esade Impact Talks. My name is Naomi Williams. I'm Associate Director and Career Coach at Esade Careers. And the Esade Impact Talks is a speaker series designed to give you the opportunity to understand the impact ecosystem and possible career opportunities within this area better through conversations with amazing professionals active in the field. So welcome. This is our first session. We're all very excited. And it is a collaboration. The talks are a collaboration between a variety of units in Esade. Esade Careers, my department, a team of career advisors. What we do is we prepare our early talent and career changes for their next career challenge. Either they're starting or they're switching, enhancing their knowledge in the sectors that they are pursuing a career in. And we do our best to connect them with interesting companies with interesting opportunities. We also have Esade Center for Social Impact. I'm looking at this app because I have two screens. This is our own in-house research center conducting rigorous and very, very relevant research and education about social impact and impact investing. They spread the knowledge through courses, through research. Lisa has recently won a award, so it's well received. We also have Esade Sud as one of the partners. This is a unit dedicated to provide the entire Esade community, not only our students, but also our staff and faculty, the opportunity to work in development projects for global justice in Latin America, Africa, Europe, and in Asia. And last but absolutely not least, our Esade Alumni Social. This is a unit that is similar to Esade Sud, the one that I mentioned just before, but they are managing and supporting teams of alumni volunteering as legal and management consultants in third sector organizations, using their talent pro bono to help society. So these are the partners we have of the Esade Impact Talks. The four of us, we are very happy to bring to you the very first talk of a series of 5 titled The Impact Ecosystem. What does it look like? This talk here, we will be giving you a general overview of the impact sectors in the next 40-45 minutes. At the end, we will have approximately 15 minutes for questions from the audience, from you all. And these can be done by unmuting your mic and asking your questions. I will be in the background, keeping an eye on the chat in case you prefer to share your comments or questions in the chat. And if time allows, we will get to those either in these 15 minutes. So without further delay, I would love to welcome our guests for today, Marcello, Cliff, and the conversation will be moderated by our own Lisa Hehenberger, Director of the Esade Center for Social Impact. Lisa, please unmute and the floor is all yours. I will stop sharing.
Thank you so much, Naomi, for this wonderful introduction. And it's really a pleasure for me to be here with all of you. And I wanted to thank our speakers for your time. And of course, to all the participants as well for being here and showing interest in this topic. And I actually, instead of introducing the speakers myself, I'm going to ask each of you to introduce yourselves. It's wonderful to be with you because I've known you for many years and the great work that you're doing. So I'd like to start with María Cruz-Conde from Open Value Foundation. If you could say a few words about yourself and the organization that you represent, please.
Thank you very much, Lisa and Esade, for inviting me to being here and to share a bit about what we do at Open Value Foundation. So Open Value Foundation is a small family foundation that promotes venture philanthropy and impact investing as an innovative way to tackle poverty. And how we do this is opening opportunities and opening minds. At least this is what we try to do. Opportunities by investing in very early stage social enterprises. This is how we believe we are going to develop the impact investing ecosystem. And how do we try to open minds? It's by spreading the word and trying to support and to develop the impact investing ecosystem. I will develop this after through the conversation, but I don't want to be to spend much more. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Maria. And I also wanted to mention that Open Value Foundation has really been a pioneer in impact investing in Spain as well, and sort of catalyzing the impact investing market and actually ourselves as well, because you were one of our first funders for our research projects. So thank you for that.
Yes, I'm so happy that we have been so.
Yeah. So I'll turn now to Cliff Pryor. If you could introduce yourself and the organization that you represent, please.
Thank you. Yeah, Cliff Pryor. I'm CEO at the GSG, the Global Steering Group for Impact Investment, which brings together influential stakeholders from both private and public sectors to collaborate on a mission to shift economies towards positive outcomes for all people on our planet. The GSG supports a network of country-level national advisory boards and task forces. I think we're up to 70 now across the world, with a focus on achieving outcomes at scale through impact investment where it's most needed. My background is mainly in the social sector, but previous to this job was the CEO at Big Society Capital, which is the UK's wholesale impact investor. Thank you.
Thank you, Cliff. And I think it's wonderful to have you here as well, because you really have been working on both sides, on both the demand and the supply side of impact investing. So I think also for our participants, you'll have a very sort of broad understanding of the sector and can give really a lot of insights into as well, you know, what is needed, you know, from for students as well to prepare for work. So I wanted as well to turn to Marcello Palazzi, and if you could introduce yourself and also the work that you're doing, please.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks so much, Lisa. Pleasure to be with you. Marcello Palazzi, I am an entrepreneur. I've been working for 30 years, plus 30 years on making what Aristotle called eudaimonia, which is the well-being through the economy, concrete, through a foundation I started in Rotterdam 30 years ago. My latest big project is to create the B Corp movement in Europe, co-founded B Lab Europe in 2014 in Amsterdam. I'm now global ambassador globally for, we now have 4,500 B Corps in 80 countries, plus we have nearly 15,000 benefit corporations by law in 8 countries. I've also been a venture philanthropist involved in microfinance for many years. I just love this combination of what I call entrepreneurship and in a way the love of mankind, which is philanthropy. How do you combine these two? And then finally, maybe I've been for many years, you know, I did my MBA at London Business School. I've been many years working around in a way reforming business school education, and I'm really happy that Esade is doing so well in this direction. Pleasure to be with you.
Thank you, Marcello. And it was nice as well to hear that you're coming next week to Barcelona and you're participating in our sustainability week. So thank you for your engagement with Esade as well.
Pleasure. Thank you.
So I want now to turn to our speakers and understand a little bit, you know, how you see the trends, you know, in the impact field. You know, what are some of the things that you would like to talk about in terms of the latest trends? So I'll start with Cliff.
Okay, well, yeah, I think there's been some remarkable, even astonishing trends, and probably the biggest one is about impact and impact investing itself. And if you go back 10 years or so, you know, we were scrabbling around. It was very small scale boutique investing into small scale social enterprises, and really struggling to get much awareness outside of our very lovely bubble. But then 5 years ago, roughly, some of the big asset managers started creating impact funds, some of them a little bit not exactly perfect, shall we say, although things have improved a lot in the last couple of years. And now we're also working to put impact measurement and management across a very wide range of funds. Over 30% probably of listed assets globally are going to be, within an impact measurement. That isn't to say that they're impact funds, but that we are looking at the positive and negative impacts of what they are actually achieving. And I think that's really remarkable. And all sorts of developments that started off small or isolated now, going global. I take the area of Big Society Capital. It was the world's first wholesale impact fund. And now there are another 5 operating. The 6th will join in Canada. It's a mobilization of around about $3 billion US dollars overall. Another 4 countries, all from from Sub-Saharan Africa, are working on pools of domestic finance to create their own wholesalers. So, that's just one of the game-changing initiatives that impact investors have created, along with entrepreneurs. And I think that the pace is really remarkable, really astonishing.
Thank you, Cliff. And I think maybe just to clarify a few terms that you have mentioned. First, impact investing. Obviously, it's investing, with a double objective of generating a financial return, but also a measurable social impact, social or environmental. And this is something that I think some students are interested in getting into, in terms of their careers. And then also you mentioned a wholesale investor, and this is really about creating, and please, Cliff, correct me if I'm wrong, but a sort of a vehicle that will invest in impact funds. So you're kind of catalyzing the impact investing market by having sort of this fund of fund vehicle that is investing in the first impact funds, providing them with funding, but also actually promoting the entire sector, by providing different tools, working on impact measurement, etc. So, right.
Absolutely perfect answer.
Thank you. So, those are some of the trends, and definitely impact measurement and management as well. Something that is becoming more and more. Something that even regular funds, investment funds need to do. So I'm getting actually lots of more regular private equity and venture capital funds getting in touch, saying that, we need to know how to measure impact as well. We are launching an impact fund, etc. So that's really part of the trends that we're seeing currently. I wanted to turn to Maria as well to see if you also had some observations on what's going on in the sector.
So, well, I don't know if there is much I can add on what you've just mentioned, and of course, Cliff has a much wider point of view. I have a smaller from Open Value Foundation, but Lisa, as you know, what I do from Open Value Foundation is to give the service of impact management and measurement to our impact funds. So I would say this is, for me, the trend. Right, I think scrutiny from investors is getting bigger. They want to know about the real level of impact on impact investing projects that they're doing, and this is impact management and measurement is still not standardized. This would be the trend, I would say, although all regulatory developments are helping to increase both transparency and capital allocation, probably, I think it's also creating a bit of uncertainty, and it's maybe not easy to difference between what's sustainable investing or impact investing. So I think impact management and measurement to be sure of the impact, direct, intentional, etc.
Great, thank you. And I wanted to turn to Marcello because you're working a lot with corporates, also with social enterprises, as you mentioned in your introduction. But can you explain a little bit what's happening there? In sort of the more corporate sector as well.
Of course, with pleasure. So I think that about maybe 30 years ago, the sort of entrepreneurial revolution was unleashed, away from only the big corporates, younger entrepreneurs. And I would say maybe 10, 15 years ago, we started to see the entrepreneurial, say, talent beginning to be more purpose-led and creating companies like many of the B Corps, Patagonia, Ben & Jerry, Triodos Bank, sort of companies that were quite young, entrepreneurial, and really saw that creating a positive world was actually essential to their purpose, their mission. And now, partly to the B Corps, but the general trend as well, we see thousands of these companies. In the B Corp database alone, we have 150,000 companies using the indicators to measure how they're doing. And this is growing. Last year, we grew by 40%. Globally, there's so much interest. And this is spilling over into big corporates. So Unilever, for example, owns 9 B Corps. Danone is nearly all a B Corp. We are in conversation with Philips, with Walmart, bigger companies, because they see that on the one hand, the younger companies are disrupting their businesses, and the younger generations, people who may have just done the MBA a few years ago, they are really much more integrated. They see, profit and purpose, contributing to a better world as being part of their business. So this together is a big shift. Maybe add 1 or 2 more things. We see, because we started about 5-6 years ago with city-based programs. So the first city was New York, created a New York for B. So the city working with B Corps to inspire all other companies. We now have 10 cities around the world. This year we are doing actually Barcelona and Edinburgh. And Edinburgh has gone further by creating a whole program in Scotland called Scotland Can Be, where basically the whole economy of Scotland is using the indicators that we use in B Corps that measure everything, diversity, climate, governance, it's ESG plus for the benefit of the whole economy. And we see this in cities. So there is a kind of waking up of municipalities and city mayors on this wider agenda of climate, diversity, more justice. The city of The Hague, I live in the Netherlands, has called itself the Impact City. I think it's the first city in the world that has decided to call itself and promote the whole idea of an impact city. I was reading the other day, I think Melbourne is also quite interested in doing that. So we see that a convergence between entrepreneurship, impact investing, as Cliff was saying, and public bodies that I think finally are waking up to see that this is really a win-win-win to encourage this kind of social purpose-led entrepreneurship for the benefit of citizens, the benefit of all countries. So I think I'm very optimistic for the next years to come.
No, that's wonderful. And I mean, what I'm seeing as well is that, companies that used to talk about corporate social responsibility, they're now talking about impact. And I'm seeing on LinkedIn, jobs that are popping up that are sort of social impact officer and social impact manager in corporates as well, which is, I think, very positive. And you touched upon regulation, and I'm wondering as well, how regulation is driving, this kind of movement. Maybe, Marcello, you can touch upon it briefly, and then I think Cliff, you also had maybe something to say about that.
Yeah. So I want to say briefly, this is the whole EU taxonomy, the financial reporting act in the EU. The EU is ahead of most other legislations in terms of continents and blocks. I think it's all great. You cannot always legislate everything, as you know. So legislation is only part of the answer, but it's a good part of the answer. I think that we start to see, people like me, I've been saying this for 25 years, our public sectors need to give the example and start, purchasing from more responsible companies. They start to be, they need to use the higher standards, and they don't do that. Maybe you read this morning in The Guardian, $1.8 trillion in perverse subsidies that our governments have paid out in the last, 2 or 3 years, just actually encouraging the kind of exploitative economy that we have. So we need to get public sector to use higher standards. I think that inside the B Corp movement, we've always spoken about also the importance of self-regulation. This is not to diminish the importance of government regulation, but at the end, there are 250 million companies in the world. If we want them to change, it has to come from inside as well as from outside. So it's both, and of course, customers, citizens, investors, pension funds, they all have to play. This is like system change, So there are very good signs that we are going in that direction.
Thank you. Cliff?
Yes, I mean, Marcello's set out some of the scene. I think what's happened just this year is going to be, this will be a year that will be remembered in this field for sure. So the IFRS, and most of you will know that that's the global accounting system, where it has created an international sustainability standards board, and that will be working on a harmonization of standards. I'll come back to why that's important, regulatory reporting, and probably within 3 years, value accounting. And what does all this come to? At the moment, there are probably more sets of standards for impact than in this this lovely Zoom of 47 people. And if you were to take one investment or one company and apply these standards across all 47 or whatever number it is here, you would have almost no correlation. And what this allows is that companies can say, hey, look, we've got really good impact standards, aren't we great? But actually they've just picked the one that fits their company most comfortably. They haven't actually got a rigorous approach. So harmonizing the standards into one global sustainability standards board is going to be absolute game change. Regulatory reporting, well, if you're working on a system of standards for impact, what companies do, what investors do, of course, you need to ensure that there's reporting on a regulatory basis. So we would expect, maybe 3 years' time, that it would be quite normal for a company to have its profit and loss account and a statement of its positive and negative impacts. And you imagine some of the changes that will happen because of that. And even further, if we go to value accounting essentially is turning those impact goods and bads into monetary amounts. So then you can say, okay, this big company made a profit of $1 billion, but actually its negative impacts come down as minus 1.5. It's actually making a loss. It's making a loss because we've taken the external impacts of a company's work as well as its internal enterprise side. This is absolute game changer. At the moment, if you want to do good and to make a financial return, you are pushing a boulder uphill. You're still pushing it uphill because the financial system at the moment does not take account of the externalities, what happens because of your carbon or your social harms or whatever it might be. If you have this system, it's rolling down the hill, and it reduces greenwashing. It creates a whole new system for finance. And I'm really glad and I'm really proud to have been involved in the G7 Impact Task Force last year, which really brought together 120 leading lights from across the world of finance, and absolute agreement on harmonization of standards and regulatory reporting. I think it will happen. The world will be quite different because of it. And you know, this is the year where that started.
Yeah, I definitely hope we're not too far away from that actually happening, because you're absolutely right that it has to be included in the way we account, you know, for it to happen.
Yeah, actually, I'll just pick up one point that I think Marcello mentioned, the public sector. You know, governments are saying yes to the private sector having to have these new rules, harmonized standards, regulatory reporting, etc. They haven't said they would do it to themselves. There's another piece of work to be had.
A great point.
But, I want to add, you know, one of the people we probably all know, Andre Hoffman of Roche and Mava Foundation, has been doing a study, $17 trillion in recovery funds around the world. How much of that money is going into, say, impact investing or impact businesses? And unfortunately, it's quite a small amount. So there's some work to do there.
Yeah. So I wanted to kind of come back to this idea of ecosystem as well, and who are the different actors. You know, we have talked about corporates, we have talked about public sector, impact investors. We haven't spoken much about the social enterprises. So I'm going to turn to Maria as well to see a little bit how can we, you know, work together so that social enterprises also have the right types of tools, the capacity to innovate, because what we see as well is that often the larger corporates, they might you know, not have the capacity to innovate on these you know, very challenging topics that we need to address, and also that public sector perhaps they don't have the right dynamics as well in place. So can you say something about that, Maria?
So I think social entrepreneurs, financing is something very important that they need. So I think it is important for us to create alliances and collaborate and to co-invest. I think one of the things that impact investing would need is to have much more blended finance, so that other investors would to de-risk and to enable to allocate more capital into social entrepreneurs. But I also think they need to have more access to technical assistance. It should be through blended finance. And I think at least this is what we try to do from Open Value Foundation, is as well spreading the word and enabling everyone to know about impact investing. I think this is a speech, of course, as Cliff was mentioning. I mean, it's grown up a lot in the last years, but still many people, if you go to very traditional asset managers or whatever, they still don't know what impact investing is, or they don't trust it. So I think we also need to share case studies and to let everyone know to develop social enterprises is not only possible, but it's necessary for the world. So we should help, and as well as supporting institutions at the academy as Esade, no, that are the big gamers here that give the voices and that create and develop knowledge. And I think it is very important to support the academy as well for this to happen. I mean, we need to report it, we need to tell the story, and we need to prove this is possible. And the academy is very important here, of course, private sector and financial sector and every sector. But we mustn't forget academy, and of course to support the social entrepreneurs, giving them technical assistance. And co-investing and to allocate and to collaborate and work together, I think.
Thank you. Marcello, I think you also wanted to add something?
Yeah, I wanted to add that two things are happening. One is that some of the social enterprises are becoming businesses. You know, some are becoming B Corp, some are becoming other kind of forms. In the UK, you have the community interest company, There are new legislation that are being started in Spain. Actually, my colleagues in Spain are working on the Empresa con Propósito. And in the city of Amsterdam, the city has decided to launch a program. It's partly B Corp, partly is the economy of the common good by gentleman Felber in Austria, which is quite strong in Spain too. L'economia del bien comune. And there we see a city taking such a stance. It's really important because in the early days, cities were a little bit afraid of social entrepreneurs. You know, they come with all these ideas, they're changing everything. And so now finally we see some cities beginning to be more embracing, which I think is really very important.
Thank you. So I think that, you know, this has given everyone a bit of an introduction into the sort of ecosystem of impact. We've spoken about different types of actors. And, you know, obviously, you know, in the impact talks, we will go into more detail into each of these, you know, types of actors. But I wanted to hear from the three of you as well now, since we have a number of students, you know, on this webinar who are interested in developing a career, you know, with impact or in the impact space. And, you know, if you could say something about, you know, the types of roles that you're seeing emerging, you know, that you know, different organizations are looking for, you know, and maybe sort of recently, and also perhaps what you think could be future interesting roles, you know, for Esade graduates and other graduates from business schools. So maybe starting with Cliff.
Well, yeah, I think the opportunities for people who want to get into the impact space have never been better, because there has been this massive increase in impact management and measurement requirements in you know, in everything from boutique investing right the way through to, you know, big corporates and multinationals and asset managers, etc. And you know, there's just so many opportunities. You think about, you know, just a couple of years ago, if there were probably more people who had been trained in business schools to understand impact than there were jobs. It's now completely the other way around. And yeah, so what do we do about that? How do people get into this job? And thinking of right from the start in undergraduate universities, you know, half the universities in the UK have a social entrepreneurship or impact group. There's a 28 university group, GRASFI, on the research into impact. Latin America has the whole country has a network on impact and social enterprise, etc. In its universities. So that's very much an opportunity. I would always say get real involvement. You know, if you've got a gap year, plug into some of the programs that are around. There is nothing better than seeing it front line and learning from that. Look, my first social enterprise was, well, to say that it failed suggested that it for a moment succeeded. It was that bad, but you know, the experience of trying it and failing and learning a lot meant that the second social enterprise I set up was pretty good, and the third one was really blazing. So you know, you learn by doing. What else would I say on this? There are a lot of transition agencies. In the UK, we have On Purpose, Claw Social, Acumen, etc. These are organizations where, you know, you take 6 months or a year to transition from, maybe you're in finance, into impact or into social enterprise or whatever. And there are, so I'm thinking of finance. What about lawyers? There's the GALE system, which is a global alliance for impact lawyers. You can get what's already free. So as a lot of universities are putting out materials on impact, and Duke University has a whole primer online, free with Coursera, and quite a few of my team have used that and say it's a really great primer. Maybe you can take a risk, like I did, hopefully more successfully, working out what your skills are and creating your own impact company, your own social enterprise, or joining in with colleagues to create a team. You know, if you can't get a job in the field that you want, then create your own. The one thing I would say about this is that we can, in Europe, in the States, we can be a bit precious about this. You know, we have to bear in mind that the big issues that the impact sector has to address are mainly in the global South. There are, for example, still 1 billion people without a home. 1 billion people. And, you know, we need to be focusing on the really big issues. And I hope everybody will have an opportunity to do what they can in that field.
Thank you. Maria, do you have any suggestions?
Well, I think Cliff has mentioned most of it, but my personal experience, like I have a background in dentistry. I'm a dentist, and I wanted to have a more meaningful career. So I started studying. I did my master's in the international cooperation. So I've got a social background. I worked for 12 years or 15 years in NGOs, and I had to develop my skills myself. But as Cliff mentioned, I think it's the better opportunity now to do it. There are many places where you can develop your skills and to introduce yourself to impact investing ecosystem, and there are many places where you can develop. I think this is much more on developing technical skills, but also very soft skills. Now, if we want to be game changers, if we want to change the things, we need to be better people. So these are other things that we should try to achieve and to improve. So besides like very strong and rigid roles, I think there are much other things that we can learn, and Cliff mentioned some of them. If you want, you look into Acumen or whatever, they are developing other different skills, and it is a fight, but I think everyone can find the way and can make it, and it's a big opportunity to do it now. So everyone wanting to do something meaningful, I'm sure impact investing is a good arena to do it.
Great. Marcello?
Yeah, I mean, I want to add to I think what Cliff was saying earlier, and also Maria, but one is be quite personalistic. So what I've always done is to look for leaders. And I remember 25 years ago, it was Anita Roddick of the Body Shop, and then it was Ben Cohen of Ben & Jerry. Go find these people who are inspiring you. And basically, you want to work with them, you know, whether it's in their companies, getting a job, or maybe you have a venture you want to propose to them. So really look for people, because these are the people embrace and this whole transition to a new economy starts from the motivations of people. So I would do that. Second thing is, inside the B movement, we have the B academics, with about, I think now 1,200 academics around the world doing case studies, researching, writing about these issues. So go and visit B academics, get in touch with some of these professors. It could be an internship, it could be a case study, it could be research. You know, when I was doing my MBA 30 years ago, my first research was Save the Children Fund. How could you make Save the Children Fund a bit more entrepreneurial, working with business, you know? And that was my beginning. Just for a paper, you know, that took 2 months to write, started off my whole career. So look at that, the people like entrepreneurs, business leaders, the academics, and then finally maybe keep a tab on where the money is going. New investment funds, sometimes public money, recovery funds. Are they going into the kind of venture that you would like to work with? And, you know, maybe finally, I think, I was reading yesterday, even BCG, Boston Consulting Group, they think they're going to earn $1 billion just in helping companies become climate friendly. So I'm not saying this cheekily. I'm saying if you put together the SDGs, it's supposed to be about $11 trillion a year being invested in SDG like ventures, climate space. There's a lot of money going into these kind of impactful jobs and impactful ventures. So there's, as Cliff was saying, it's never been it's never been as good as it is now to work in this space.
Yeah. Actually, some of the suggestions that you were making, I'm approached often by students who want to work, to do a master thesis or to work on a project and so on. And I have Louis here on the webinar who did his master thesis with me. We were working on governance of impact funds. We're actually about to launch that study quite soon. And then he went on to work on an internship at Oryx Impact Fund. And now if you want to unmute yourself, you can tell me what's going on now in your life.
Actually, no, but I've been, but thank you very much. And yes, actually, I joined the Boston Consulting Group a few months ago. And it's funny because what was just said about them really wanting to go on climate change, sustainability, and social impact actually is more than true. We've been receiving quite a lot of emails. They're hiring a lot. They're really pushing for that. On every level. And even the Dubai office, which is where I am, is just opening a sustainability office and is trying to in the next years wants to open a social impact practice as well. So it's really, they're completely into that. And I think your message could not have been more correct.
That's why I thought I had to bring you in, Louis. Sorry about the cold call.
Pleasure.
And I also, wanted to open up for questions from the participants. So please do feel free to raise your hand if you have a question, and I'll unmute you. Or you can also put your questions in the chat. I'll start with a question that we already have from Estelle. Estelle says, I would be keen to hear whether you think that we as future leaders would be having more actual impact by working in the impact space directly, or by targeting an industry such as the venture space, and then aim to implement changes from within the organization. I don't know if one of our panelists would like to address that.
I want to say that for me, impact is not the end of all. What we are really seeing is this transformation of our capitalism, of our economy, which also, as we were saying earlier, all the SDGs, the transition towards a climate zero economy, this is massive. And this is going to be the future. Of course, we may be delayed, we may have hiccups on the way, but this is the trajectory that the economy is going. So this is really a massive, it's bigger than just impact. Second thing, specifically on this question, it's fine to start anywhere, whether it's the impact space, whether it is in the more mainstream economy, provided that you have a job where you can actually achieve something. So the kind of position and the power you have in your job is really important. So make sure you get a good role and not some sort of paper shuffling job that doesn't lead to anything.
Cliff, you had your hand up as well.
Yeah, this is a little bit left field, but it follows on from what Marcello is saying, I think, which is, there's a lot of interest, a huge amount of interest in being a social entrepreneur and impact, creating your own impact enterprise and so on. And this question about, what's your route? Well, actually, everybody on this call is an entrepreneur. Every single one of you has got an enterprise, and it's the enterprise that you can't get rid of, which is the enterprise of your own life. And all of the things that you may have learned about what it is like to create an enterprise, like having a clear goal, what fires you up, bringing together diverse talent, spotting opportunities, being resilient when things go wrong, all of the things that you will have learned probably about, you know, how you create an external enterprise actually is very true of you and your life. So if you have a goal, if your goal is, you know, tackling climate change, or if your goal is working in one of those slums or favelas with 1 billion people in informal settlements, you know, whatever it is, in healthcare, in education, in and so on, whatever is your goal and your route, just think about all the things you may have learned about creating an enterprise and apply it to yourself. And that is a much better way of thinking of it, I think, than thinking, oh, the best route is this route, or the best route is that route. The best route is the route is right for you.
Thank you for that. Yes, I think definitely, I mean, part of what you should be thinking about is, you know, what is your passion and what are you interested in terms of, you know, specific challenges in society, but also, you know, what are you good at, you know, so what is it that you can add, you know, what can you bring to solve that particular challenge? And that could be, you know, as an investor, maybe you have been working on finance, you know, maybe you actually want to set up a company yourself, you know, so think about what are your skills and what is your passion, and try to see if there's actually a good fit, you know, between those. I see a hand from Liza. Would you like to unmute yourself, please?
Yes, thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm finishing my MBA with Brown University in IE. And as someone who is making a career transition from an unrelated field, but I'm very interested in social impact, I am curious how to position myself for employers, because I don't, you know, I'm coming from education and nonprofits, and there are analogous skill sets, of course, but from the job descriptions that I'm looking for and looking at, it seems that there's, you know, a lot that I still have to learn, and employers are still looking for high levels of experience and knowledge. So I'm curious what you might have to say on that front and any advice. Thank you.
I mean, I could say something about that. I mean, since at Esade, we also have different levels of students. We have, you know, undergraduates, master students, and MBA students. And often what we see is that MBA students, you know, do an MBA to actually change their careers, you know, so they have, you know, been working on in one field, and then they do an MBA, and then they want to move to another field. And that it's always a challenge, you know, because, you know, when you're looking for a job, you know, you're at the level where, you know, they will value your experience, you know, because you're an MBA graduate. But at the same time, you know, if the experience is not the one that they're looking for, you know, then it's more difficult. So that is in general. And Naomi, you probably will have a lot of information about this, but I think in terms of the impact space, you know, there are other dimensions that are not just in terms of technical competence that might also play a role. It might be, you know, for example, if you have an experience in education, it's a sector-specific experience that could be contributing, you know, if you're, for example, you know, part of an impact investing team that is investing in education, you know, you can be an expert on the field rather than a technical expert on finance. But yeah, I mean, it is more challenging when you're at a higher level than when you're at sort of a grad, sort of bachelor and master's level, because you're not expected to have any experience then. I don't know, Cliff, Maria, or Marcello, if you have something to add. All of you. Okay.
I wanted to add, you know, if you're doing an MBA and you come from education, I think it's a massive opportunity. You know, education is actually one of the means for transforming our economies now, whether it's in business schools or universities or elsewhere. So I would look for education for sustainability, education for social impact, etc. And with the MBA, you know, MBA is a very good generic education, to get into many companies that maybe in the education space, in teaching, etc. So I think it's a pretty important space to be in.
I would agree. If you love education as well as having trained as an undergraduate in it, some of the biggest social enterprises in the world are in the education space. Just thinking, if you're in the US, have a look at social finance. Their career impact bond system is really quite outstanding. If you're up for changing countries, there are some unicorn scaled education enterprises because of the, sad to say, the failures of the state education system. So plenty of opportunities in this field in education, if that's what really is right for you.
Maria?
No, what I wanted to mention, I also come from the non-for-profits, and I think the most is yet to be written here. So if you're curious, if you read, if you listen, if you go to events, I think you should convince. I mean, yes, just be curious. Of course, the education is important, and hard skills are important, and technical skills. But I do really think, since the most is yet to be written, there's still many spaces where we all fit.
Naomi?
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. I do want to add. Absolutely agree with all you're saying, and I think it's very important that students and also career changers look into their transferable skills. So take a step back, go to the drawing board, figure out what your transferable skills are, and map them with the storytelling. I mean, a lot of what we encounter in careers is a lot of students, they come to us with what they want the company to know about them, but it's good to map what the company wants, requires, and how you can be a good fit, how you can be an added value. And I think in this case, Liza, coming from education is such an added value that you can bring to the table. And also proactivity. It's still a sector where there's a lot going on in between the talks. So networking is very, very crucial and very important as well. So also the correct networking skills, because that's an art in itself. Like, how do I network? Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Naomi. Louis?
Yeah, thank you. I actually had a comment and a question just regarding the previous topic. During the thesis I did with Lisa, I actually asked that question about what they were looking for to a lot of funds, and they all told me that, I mean, the answer that came up the most was that passion. It does sound a bit cheesy, but passion was the thing they were looking for first. There's all the rest they could actually teach you, but what they're really looking and what they needed for the company to thrive and to work as a team was really that motivation and that mindset, right? So I think they said that was the number one key thing to look for. And related to that, I wanted to get the panel's opinion on field experience, especially in, for example, in NGOs, in social enterprises, in different parts of the world, because I always felt like being on the ground and actually, seeing the final output and outcome of this impact is key to really be able to afterwards, I wouldn't say manage it, but like take decisions and work in that space. And I was hoping to just ask what you thought on the topic, and if you had any recommendations on how to get it. Of course, it's a very specific, depends, it's case specific, but still, if you had any thoughts on that.
So Cliff or Maria or Marcello, something about field experience and how to get that?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, field experience. It's the equivalent of working up from the floor, isn't it? In traditional companies, hugely important, huge value. But I would say, particularly if you're doing your field experience with people who are living in poverty, living in emerging economies, etc., make sure that you leave more than you take, because what you're doing there, I mean, you're learning, they're desperate. Just always make sure that balance between what you're learning and what they're gaining is for them more than it is for you. So yeah, just one piece of advice in it. I'm sure that that's what everybody would want to do anyway, but to say.
Thank you for that. And I think we have time for just a final question from Monica, our Net Impact President.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, everyone, for this session. So I'm an MBA candidate here at Esade, and I would like to listen to your perceptions about what is the difference, if you see any difference, between impact businesses, low carbon businesses, and also sustainable businesses. And I ask this because before coming to the MBA, I was working at a boutique consulting firm in Brazil, focused on sustainability and climate change. And we never positioned ourselves as an impact consultant. And I see that many of the projects that we were working with, they were impact driven. So I would like to see your perception on this difference, if you see any difference on these approaches. Thank you.
Well, I like to say that it doesn't really matter, actually. It doesn't matter in the sense that what matters is your positive contribution as an organization. That's what matters. And this is, Cliff was mentioning, Lisa was mentioning, how do you measure? So if the intention of the leaders, of the owners, of the entrepreneurs is a positive intention, then you could call it impact, sustainable, whatever, because the big schism is between, say, the extractive capitalism and what I call regenerative capitalism. That's what the real shift is, creating this regenerative economy. And again, you know, some people call it impact, some people call it sustainable. Yes, you can dig deep into it, but from a kind of generic perspective, it doesn't really matter as long as it's positive.
I would agree with that, but I would add one thing, which is, you know, if you're working on climate mitigation, think about the social side too. I think this is one of the things that the world is waking up to. That yes, we absolutely need to get to net zero, and probably a lot earlier than 2050. We're not going to get there without the permission of the population, and climate initiatives that don't take account of the impact on the people who are living around that climate work will rebel. And you know, we must make sure that we have social justice and climate justice at the same time, and that these days gets called a just transition towards net zero. So I would come at it that way. As Marcello has said, you know, impact, social, it's whatever. It's what you actually achieve that matters.
Thank you so much. I think Naomi is sort of hinting that we should be wrapping up. So I'd like to thank our speakers for your participation. It's been wonderful to have you on this panel. And of course, also to all the participants who have joined us on this Thursday afternoon. I hope this has inspired you to get into the impact space, to take courses on social entrepreneurship, impact investing, impact measurement, etc., and develop your career, in this direction. So I'm now going to hand over to Naomi to wrap up.
Yeah, just like Lisa said, a big thank you to especially our guest, Lisa, you as well, for an amazing conversation, and everybody for their questions and their input. There's a lot to do. There's a lot of world that we have to change.